to Blogging for Programmers. I'm Louis Davidson. This is the 3rd episode. And I want to get a little bit of the more boring stuff out again in this episode, and that is taxonomy. Now, understand if you're just starting a blog, this is really early stuff. It's just things you need to think about and prepare for. One of the big things I messed up in the past is, how do I find blogs I've written later? So, maybe 10 years from now, you've written something today. 10 years from now, how are you going to find it? And I told the story in the previous episode about how I'd written some blogs where I'd possibly, shared personal information, and I didn't, got all that settled, but I want to find them now. 15, 20 years later, I want to find those blogs and read them, maybe revamp them and put them out again, because honestly, there's a lot of people interviewing these days. But I've done that too many times. I've recorded this a few times. This is the 3rd time I've done it from start to finish, and I'm just keeping that in. So I couldn't find that blog, and I'm thinking, how do I find it? And I realized up until now, until I started my new blog on WordPress, I didn't really know how to organize my blog. I just put blogs up, and I did it on either SimpleTalk or I used to use SQLblog.org, and I also then before that did DrSQL.spaces. We never actually had organization. SimpleTalk does have organization. That's where I kind of learned these details. And when I started my own WordPress blog, I knew I had to do something a little better than I'd done. So as I write things, I categorize them and I give them some category. We'll talk about that in a minute. First, we'll talk about search. So search is a fantastic tool. If you need to find something, you search for it now. I organize even my homepage on my phone. I just pull down and I type the search. Here's the app I want to run. I type it. I go on, let's put it this way. I use the Disney app at Disney quite a bit. And for the weeks that I'm there, I do not put that icon on my screen. I pull down and I type D and I click Disney. It's just a habit, and search becomes a habit. So when you're writing these things, you need to think about the ways someone may come to that blog and think about the ways you would have come to that blog. Say you're a data programmer. I'm a data programmer. And when the first time I wanted to retrieve data from a database, how would I do that? How would I know to look for a select statement, right? Or project is the really technical term for it. I have no idea how you would just happen upon that phrase. I mean, it's pretty obvious one, but there's a lot of things that aren't so obvious when you're searching for them. So one of the things you want to try to do is put that sort of thing in the blog. If you can think of synonyms for what you're talking about, make sure you mention them. Go, other words for this might be, things like that. So any way you can help people search for your blogs by text. Now, the hardest thing is that you got to do more than that. And you've got to make it organized a little bit. And if you're going to write on the same topic, let's say you just want to write on performance tuning. You don't need categories. You don't need anything special for that. You don't need a hierarchy. Like I'm drawing back here. You've got your home page, and we all know there's pages you click on. Maybe you have a list of blogs, and maybe you go, well, I want to look at certain blogs about SQL Server, and I want to look about performance tuning. I want to look at, and all the way down here, you're trying to find the blog that you need. So you start thinking about how can I organize that? And you maybe think of a folder structure. And that's a really good thing to do as you get started. Just get an idea of how you want to organize things. In my blog now, I started out with 2 categories, SQL Server and opinions or editorials. And then I've added a few as I've gone along because I want to separate things. I may want to only show certain types of blogs on the front page and not show other ones on the front page, or show them at the top for a certain period of time. And we do this using categories and tags. And categories are the hierarchy. So you might have a home category. You may not, but you may have a home, like a home category. You may have underneath that um, editorials, blogs, SQL Server, performance tuning, whatever the primary topic you're talking about is. And then maybe one level under there. Now, that's a big question. I'm not going to do that on my personal blog this time, but you may want to do that. You may want to have a databases category and then break those databases down into different levels. Or you may want to have an administration and a coding category and then put things underneath there. Don't go crazy with categories. Don't do it like a folder structure where you've got level after level after level after level, because you're never going to you don't want to have a bunch of categories and you only have one or two blogs in them. Ideally, you're going to like level it out. It's going to be like a very level tree. We also just want to lightly be able to organize the site, and if somebody wants to look at a certain type of content, they can do that. So you have this light kind of thinking of categories at the top, and then you have tags, and tags are additional search things you're not putting into your blog. Maybe you have a category of SQL Server, and then this is a blog about performance tuning. This one pertains to SQL Server 2025 because it just came out and it's a new feature. Maybe it pertains to SQL Server overall for the years. I mean, this has been part of it. Tags are something you should do whether you do categories or not. So if you want to do something like just have one category that's, blog or uncategorized, and you just hide it, you go into the theme of your website and just don't show the categories. And I'm going to talk a lot in terms of how you would do it with WordPress, because I feel like they're the best place for a simple, cheap blog. For free, you can do a pretty decent blog to get started. For a little bit more money, you can do a site with no ads. And then with a little bit more money, you can do a little bit better site where you can control a little more of the setup of the site and make it look a little better. But and we're talking $50 right now, I think, per year or something like that. It's not a tremendous amount. For a little bit higher, you can do a little more. And if you go, you can spend some real money doing this, and you can host your own website in the WordPress engine. But most of us who are doing this as a hobby, we're just we're trying to do this for as cheap as possible. I only pay because I don't want people to have commercials. And you can actually do this in GitHub. There's lots of different ways to host a site. I still think doing things like categories and tags, very important, certainly tags. But I also want to say this before we go too far. Don't get bogged down in these details. Like you want to have some organization, you want to be able to find it, and you want to be able to find it yourself. So if I had been using tags properly in the old days, I could search for HR interviewing tag, perhaps, and I would find it because there would be a much smaller list. And I would see what words I used or didn't use that didn't fit. And maybe it's just gone. It's possible it was just on my old spaces.live, if you remember that far back. They used to have Microsoft used to have a microblogging kind of place called Spaces. And it may have just been on there. I don't know. I may look for that. If you go to archive.org and look at their Wayback Machine, you can sometimes find your old blogs. I don't think I did because I think I scraped those a while back. So just think about, how you're going to get into things. Think about when you go to a grocery store or a department store or even a library, if you're still know what a library is. There's always a structure, right? Frozen foods here, regular food, produce, and then those are broken down into subsections. You want to be able to do that and direct readers to the place that you want to direct them. Because you're going to write things that you want to go, look at this. And then you're going to write things which are just I want to write this. And you may not even tell anybody, and maybe just subscribers to your site or people who are doing searches find it. That's completely okay. and I want to I'm going to end this one really quickly. And I want to end it on this thing called search engine optimization. I do not excel at this. WordPress, in the latest version of WordPress I have the premium edition now. It's like they have these tools that help a little bit with SEO, and they'll suggest you titles and they'll suggest tags. I always take the tags. The tags are great. I mean, I don't really mind. They're going to help people find this blog and talk about it. What I don't like are the ways something that needs to be optimized in search engine optimization. They start sounding weird. They start being like these big words, these fluffy words, these meaningless words, empty words, and, really trying to put your title in there. I typically will take that and, you know, take the good parts, use the language I would use. There's so many of these tips. It's going to be really quick. All these are going to be really quick. We'll talk about what kind of voice I think you should use to make this your own and to make you enjoy it. And that's a big thing here. I don't want you to not enjoy this work of writing blogs because you have Taxonomy, because you're trying to make this best site. You're trying to make a site that rivals, the professional sites that are out there. You get started if it's text, it's totally fine. But I'll get to that later. All right. Thank you. Episode 3. Bye-bye.